Alright, ladies and gentlemen. As you all know, we're trying out a new program. One that should see more and more adventurers survive their first encounters. I'll be handing out the names of your partners for the next few months, so please be patient. The guild receptionist said from her place atop a table, requiring the extra height considering she was a goblin, and thus vertically challenged. I was eager to find out who I was partnered with. I may be an elf with a full century of wizardly knowledge under my belt, but I was new to this whole adventuring thing. I'm glad to know that I picked the right time to sign up as well, considering this new buddy system trial run that they were doing. So, with that in mind, I was more than happy to wait to receive the name of my adventuring partner, a person with far more experience than I in such matters. As stoic as my expression happened to be, for it was improper for an elf of my standing to show naked excitement, I was having trouble keeping my ears from wriggling slightly, the closer the goblin got to me, and by the time she stood before me I was doing my best to diminish the light blush that coloured my cheeks. While I looked down at her, she looked right up at me, and grinned impishly while handing over a card. "Good luck, Elfie," she winked, leaving me flustered as she moved on. But I had my assigned partner, and so I raised the card and got a good long look at the picture which was drawn on it. Immediately my ears stopped wagging. A slight spasm at the corner of my mouth was the only indication of life to be seen by the outside observer. For upon the card was the visage of a scruffy-looking, haggard human man with a sort of cocky or unconcerned smirk upon his lips. The reason for my shock at this pairing was simple. Humans lack any magical talent. They are simply magic deficient, and that made them lesser in many important ways compared to everyone else. That is not to say they don't make fine warriors. Their knights are in most cases the envy of the civilized world, and their nobles are grand schemers. Even the common folk are highly sought after for all manner of reasons, though some are far less reputable reasons than others. But I had expected to be paired with someone that was more compatible than a human would be. They weren't even a knight. In fact, they were something called an Artificer? I don't even know what that is, but whatever it is surely won't be complementary to my skills, and that could pose a problem. Plus, just looking at the picture was producing an odd and unpleasant odour. "You gonna keep eyeing up my face, or are you actually going to introduce yourself, lass?" A ragged-sounding voice spoke from over my left shoulder, causing me to whirl around to face the speaker, and come face to face with the same visage, down to the smile, just in the flesh. The man, Hedrick Starsinger according to his card, was of average height and build, with dull brown eyes, black mutton chops with a moustache, apparently that's what the humans called them, and glossy black hair kept out of his eyes thanks to a strip of leather used to tie it back. He was the picture of an average human. Average in the sense that he was the only human I'd ever actually met or seen, though clearly one that was well used to being on the road. "Right, yes. Ilantha Elafiel, at your service, Sir Starsinger," I say, my voice cracking slightly, and thus coming out far squeakier than I would have liked. Worse still, his face twists into a light grimace, as he waves a hand dismissively. "Ain't a sir, lass, nor a knight nor a noble, just a man. Anyway, pleasure to meet you. Let's get going, shall we?" he said, plucking an odd-looking hat off of a chair, along with a long brown coat that must reach his heels. Again, he threw me for a loop with this declaration of departure, but my feet propelled me after him without conscious effort. "Going? Already? But we haven't even gotten to know each other yet or pick out a job to take on," I say, concern welling up in my voice. Mainly for myself, I was starting to wonder just what kind of man I'd found myself thrust into a partnership with. "We can learn more about one another on the road, and I already found us a good job to start with, one that you should have no problem with," he said over his shoulder while stepping out of the guild hall. Even as I stepped out behind him, I could hear hushed whispers from those that witnessed our sudden departure, and I flushed hot with indignation. Worse still was when he thrust some sort of long bag into my arms, nearly making me drop my staff in the process. "Hold this for a moment, please," he said, his order framed as a polite request, even as he relinquished his hold on the bag, the weight of which made itself immediately known. We elves are not known for our physical strength, which is why most of our melee warriors favor speed and dexterity over brute force. "What even is in this thing?" I grunt, struggling to hold onto it and my staff at the same time, while he slips into his coat, then takes the bag back with damnable ease. "Something for later, if I find the right thing to use it on," he said, flashing a broad and, in my opinion, slightly manic smile. I had no response to this, and so in a daze just followed him out of the city, to Goz knew where. It took far longer than I would care to admit for me to come to my senses, and by then we were miles away from the city with no signs of stopping, even as the sun began its slow, meandering descent towards the horizon. "So, Mr. Starsinger, just where are we going?" I asked tentatively, and the man threw his arms upwards as if praising the gods. "At last, she speaks. I was worried you'd gone mute on me. But to answer your question, we're going to the base of the Ethereal Summit. Got some beasts that need taking care of. Nothing too dangerous. Perfect place to start for a greenie such as yourself," he said, and I bristled slightly. Who was he to call me green? I had to be at least half a century older than him, if not more. If anything, he was less experienced than I was. I terminated such thoughts almost immediately, but they still left a bad taste in my mouth. Just because I was older than him didn't mean I was better. I needed to keep that in mind, even if it left me overly irritated. So for now I kept my mouth shut and stewed in my irritation, quietly intent on learning just what made this particular human special. And finding out what an artificer was. Probably some special human occupation or something. Days passed, and I discovered my partner was quite the talker. He would go on and on for hours, talking about anything and everything. I've sat through lectures conducted by 5 centuries-old elven archmages that are more coherent and linear than what this man is talking about, and those lectures lasted for weeks. It was honestly quite tiring, to a point where I started to tune him out and think about the future. I've never been all that prone to daydreaming, but I found it came rather easily during this part of our journey. I dreamed of the future, one full of riches and great power, of having a dedicated team of the best and brightest warriors or mages in the world to help me defeat whatever evils rose to face us. I was rudely pulled from these daydreams on the 5th day of our journey, and noticed we'd reached our destination. Or rather, we were still a day away from it. The Ethereal Summit lay ahead of us, looming overhead, exuding an aura that certainly lived up to the name. But that was not where Hedrick was gazing. Instead, he was intently staring at something off to our left, in the forest that surrounded the mountain's base. "Hedrick? What is it? Bandits? Goblins?" I asked, my body thrumming with excitement. Finally, something to fight. The first step towards eternal glory, fame and riches. But he shook his head, and I frowned. "Worse. Snufflagore," he murmured. His voice clipped. I balked. A Snufflagore? All the way out here? Impossible. They were demonic creatures, and thus only resided within the hells themselves, or were brought into this world thanks to negligence, or a thinning of the veil between worlds. So to encounter a Snufflagore, all the way out here, in the wilderness, is simply ridiculous. "Surely you jest. Why would a Snufflagore be all the way out here? And how can you even tell?" I say, my tone clearly disbelieving. He shoots me a look that says he doesn't like being questioned, but I'm not intimidated by him, or his looks. "Smell it," is all he said, before starting to stalk off into the forest with me in tow. Smell? Preposterous. Nobody can smell a demonic creature. They don't have any kind of scent at all. You're just trying to jerk my chain, to use one of your silly human phrases, I huff. And I can tell from the way his head rolls slightly that he just rolled his eyes. Which normally wouldn't do much to me, but right now it's infuriating. "Don't you roll your eyes at me, mister. I know my demonic beasts. A Snufflagore cannot exist naturally in this plane without having passed through some sort of rift between planes, or have been summoned here." My arms swept wide, as I spun in a circle while still following him. "And I see no summoner nor hell rifts, so clearly you're losing your mind or playing some sort of stupid joke on me," I continue, before nearly running into his back, as he stops suddenly and crouches. I look down at him with a dumbfounded expression on my face. "What are you doing?" "Shush, get down," he hisses, waving a hand in a manner that suggests some sort of silent military-style communication. But I don't think about that. Instead, I'm more focused on the fact that he'd shush me. I feel my face flush, heat rising in my cheeks. "Shush? Shush? How dare you I'm silenced, as he grabs my wrist and pulls me rather forcefully down beside him, another hand clamping over my mouth to silence any protests. When I stopped squirming, he let go of my wrist and used that hand to point ahead of us. My eyes follow the pointing finger to behold what has him so spooked. It is not a snuffleupagus. It is a rabbit. A simple, normal, harmless, and rather adorable rabbit. I stare at it in shock, then disbelief, then finally anger. I slap at the hand still closed over my mouth, and then slap at his arm and shoulder, causing him to flinch and lean away from me. "A rabbit? That's what has you so spooked? God, you humans are just as stupid and paranoid as the rumors say!" I exclaim. And he bristles but doesn't say anything. Maybe he knows I'm right, or maybe he's trying to think up some sort of witty comeback. Regardless, I stand and step out of the undergrowth, approaching the rabbit with confidence, and all while ignoring his hissed orders to get back there with him. I stop beside the rabbit, who is currently as scrunched up as possible, and shivering in fear of my appearance. Again, absolutely harmless. I crouch and pet it, smiling softly. "See? Nothing to worry about. It's just a harmless rabbit," I say, while looking over my shoulder toward Hedrick, only for a searing pain to flash from my hand and arm. Crying out, I look back at what is happening, and am horrified to discover that the rabbit's head has split open to reveal a maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. Teeth which have just sunk deeply into my flesh and are seeking to go deeper. A panicked scream tears itself from my throat, and I feel fire gather in my palm, a fireball forming within the confine of the not rabbit's mouth. It activates and promptly detonates not half a second later, sending me flying backwards with large gashes rent in the flesh of my hand. The not rabbit is also sent flying, but not quite as far as I had been. Landing with a grunt and a bit of a tumble, I feel normal hands grasp me, halting my backwards momentum before hoisting me upwards. Then it all comes back, what I had read about snuffleupagus. They were magic resistant. The only type of magic that actually worked on them was holy magic, of which I had none. And when they hunted, they would take on the appearance of a harmless creature, like a rabbit for example. Once prey had been caught, they would not just eat it slowly and in a most painful fashion, but they also feasted on the soul, damning what remained to an eternity of suffering in the hells. It was not a pleasant way to go, and I could already feel a small part of my own soul was missing, along with some of my hand. Actually, a lot of my hand now that I looked at it, shock starting to set in. Then there was a stinging on my cheek, and my pointed ears registered the sound of flesh meeting flesh at high speeds, because Hedrick had just slapped me. "Oi! Keep your focus on the here and now. Listen close because I have a plan. Barrier magic works fairly decently on these things, so make one, and keep it contained while I prepare," he yelled at me, the sting of his slap keeping me focused on his voice. I should have been angry, but fear was drowning my anger at the moment, as I watched what had once been a rabbit begin to morph into something that was decidedly not a rabbit. His order about the barrier magic didn't make sense. Magic didn't work on a snuffleupagus, so why even... Oh. An idea made itself known to me, and I nodded, my good hand taking up my staff, and I did my best to focus on the spell I wanted to cast, just as the snuffleupagus revealed its true form, one I could barely comprehend in the moment. But my idea worked. A circle of earth rising from the ground, and trapping the demonic beast for the moment. Though not quite long enough, a punch from the creature shattered a portion of the barrier and afforded me a brief glimpse of his hideous form. But I focused a little more and rebuilt the barrier. I couldn't turn my attention away from the barrier to see what Hedrick was up to, but I felt his hand on my shoulder after a minute. "Alright, when I say, drop part of the barrier, I need a clear line of sight on this bastard," he said, and I didn't question him. He clearly had something he thought would work, and the last time my hand listened, I probably got my hand bitten by a demon, so, well, best do as he says, yeah? "Drop it!" Immediately, I let part of the trap fall, the many eyes of the creature swiveling towards us, only for thunder to clap right beside me. I was so startled by the sound that my focus was lost entirely, the trap failing and allowing the creature to escape, but not fast enough it seemed. A giant hole opened up between a pair of eyes, and the beast wailed in agony, a sound one only heard from a demon when touched by holy magical weapons. There was another crack of thunder, and beneath it I caught the sound of something akin to a lever being worked. Another wound appeared on the beast, and it turned and fled into the forest, with Hedrick in hot pursuit. He carried a strange metal stick. At first I thought it a strange short sword, but getting a better look at it suggested otherwise. It had some sort of tube, and even from here I could see grooves along the inside of it in a spiral pattern. How peculiar. I would need to ask about it later, if we survived. We tracked the beast to a den, and instead of venturing inside, Hedrick stopped about 4 feet away from the entrance, and slung the strange stick over his shoulder. "Right. I think we got the beast cornered, and from the smell of it, I don't think it's the only one," he said, rummaging around in his bag for a moment. "If that's the case, shouldn't we get some holy warriors? Surely they will be better suited to this than we are," I asked, curling my hand to my bosom, looking for a bandage in my own bag. I'm not all that adept at healing magic, so it's a bit difficult to heal myself. "Nah, I got this," he said with a shake of his head, and I was again confused. How did he intend on dealing with a whole nest of snufflagores, alone no less? I was about to voice my concerns when he pulled some sort of strange ball from his bag. I noted it was made of metal, and had strange runes written on it around some sort of dial. It was also littered in holy symbols from every faith that was known to work against the hells. He hummed some sort of tune as he twisted the dial, paused, and twisted it back the other way just slightly, before he threw it overhand into the cave. "Hey, do me a favour, and cave the entrance in, please," he said, taking a few steps back as I heard the tinking of the metal ball, bouncing off the stone of the cave. Without a word, I did as he asked, and used my magic to seal the entrance, before a deep boom sounded from within. Through any cracks in the sealed entrance, a burst of holy radiance shone, followed by bits of holy fire. From deeper within, there was the shrieking of many snufflagore, but they went silent soon after. "There, demon problem handled, let's get going," he said with a grin, and then glanced at my hand. "Oh, right, gonna have to deal with that right now, actually. All sorts of nasty diseases those things carry." He drew a short sword he'd had hidden somewhere in his person, and carefully extended my arm for me. "What?" I say, still confused, still in shock, and I don't even realize he swung the sword till I watch my own hand fall to the ground. He's already pressing a bandage to the stump by the time it all really registers, and I pass out. That was weeks ago. Honestly, it's been a whirlwind of discovery since then, and he's sworn to me that he'll make me a replacement hand as an apology. I don't know what to think, what to do. These humans are clearly smarter and more ingenious than the rumors would have had me believe, and now I wonder just what else they're hiding. Perhaps I'll find out. I fully intend on sticking around with Hedrick. I'm sure any time spent together will be most illuminating. Till then, I think I'll see what it takes to become an artificer.